Welcome to the Rockin Rich Lynch on the Radio Show. I'm your host, Rockin Rich Lynch, inviting you to join me as we discover great new music by bands and artists from around the world. With interviews, music news and reviews, great prizes, and a whole lot more. Visit us online today at soundpress.net for great music promotion and publicity. Hi, this is Rockin Rich Lynch, and you're listening to the very best of Rockin Rich Lynch on the radio. We recently moved our operations from the New York, New Jersey market to Nashville, Tennessee, and we are now looking for a production and broadcast partner in the region to take the radio show to new heights. If you're a band, musician, solo act, or represent a musical project in any genre, please visit soundpress.net and our new site, musiccitynashville.net, to learn how we can help get your message to the world. Now, please enjoy this great interview from our archives. The man we are about to speak with is an acclaimed American jazz fusion and Latin jazz guitarist who will be celebrating his 40th year in the music industry in 2014. It's my pleasure to introduce another great musician from the state of New Jersey to the show today, Mr. Al Di Meola. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Hey, Al, I want to do a little bit of a This Is Your Life, if that's okay. You got a brand new album out called All Your Life, a tribute to the Beatles music.
Yep.
And I had the pleasure of being in the audience at one of your more unique concerts probably in your career, when in 2009 you returned to your high school to play the auditorium there.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
What do you recall about that night?
Well, I was very, very touched. You know, they had they wanted to make it a special night for me, a tribute, a welcome home evening. You know, so playing that auditorium the time before was when I was in high school. We played a variety show. So going back to that school, what blew me away was that everything was exactly the same floors, same walls, everything. The auditorium was actually even better than I had remembered it. But you know, seeing a lot of my schoolmates in particular, and maybe even a couple of teachers, was beautiful, man. We took pictures together, and I had the good fortune of having my group already on tour in the States. So we just took a night off, or had a night off, and we went over to Bergenfield, and I was able to present what I've been doing on the road throughout the world in my hometown, and they gave me, you know, all these kinds of little awards and everything, and it was for a worthy cause as well. So I was very touched. It was a beautiful evening, really.
Hey Al, I ended up there that night because my wife is a 1985 Bergenfield Bear graduate. And we started out the night at Matthews, you know, right there on the main street, Washington Ave in Bergenfield.
The diner.
Diner. And a lot of your old friends were right there. You know, it was cool to see how a lot they'd gotten together, a lot of your old classmates, and they were just so excited to see you beforehand. So it was really kind of interesting because we're going back a long time ago when you were in high school. So it was really interesting to see.
Sure.
How did Bergenfield, Al, prepare you with its unique downtown and close proximity to New York City? How did growing up in that town in Bergen County, New Jersey, go on to inform the incredible career that you would have?
It had a lot to do with it. It really did. We had a couple of record stores in town where it's basically where I spent most of my time after school, absorbing, falling in love with the records, you know, buying one a day. I used to bother my mother, who worked uptown at one of the jewelry stores, and I'd hit her up for $5 almost on a daily basis. And she said, you know what? I can't refuse you because you're not a smoker. Most kids smoke, so I'd rather give you the money for the music rather than buying cigarettes. So my education was through those records. It was through a lot of friends of mine in junior high, and even from grammar school. We played guitar. We played in bands together. Had a lot of bands growing up there. What else? We very often took I think it was either the 86 or the 167 bus over to the Port Authority, and we took the A train down to the village. And that was the other part of my education was basically, absorbing all of those great, acts that played at the Fillmore East. So I got to see everybody, you name it. And I also downtown Bergenfield, from day one, I just had the good fortune and luck of getting a great teacher. His name was Bob Aslanian, and Bob was like from the old school jazz world. So I was getting the best of really both, like an education and all the theoretical sides of jazz, but at the same time he was teaching me Beatles stuff because I loved the Beatles and the Ventures and whatever was popular at the time. So I had a good early training from somewhere 9 years old and up,
Yeah,
and then just growing up in that town, it was an amazing town at that time for music. We all loved the popular music of the day, and it's completely changed now for the worse.
Yeah,
unfortunately, but yeah, I was really fortunate to be in good proximity to the most important city of the world that always had a wide variety of great music to choose from any given night. And there were various periods in which I ventured into jazz clubs and Latin clubs, and absorbed by myself influences up at the Corso and 86th Street. And then I had all those rock years at the Fillmore East, going with my friends from high school. So just nothing but a great reminisce,
Well, based on the year that you graduated, you must have seen some amazing shows there at the Fillmore East. Al, let me just back up really quickly. Al Di Meola is on the phone with us. aldmeola.com is the website. He has a fantastic brand new album out right now called All Your Life. It's a tribute to the amazing music of the Beatles, and what you've done on that album is pretty incredible. Al, I want to ask you, do you still have a lot of that vinyl?
I have a lot of my vinyl down in the basement. Some of it's got some water damage and everything, and I wish they were all in pristine condition. But those were the best days, man. We miss that. It's really awful how things have. Even though they're more convenient to have everything on your iPhone or iPod, it's just I really miss going through the bins.
Well, for you, Al, it's serendipitous because you could have been born in a cornfield in the Midwest and you wouldn't have been the person you are today. So it's amazing how time and circumstances just help create who you are, and you're an amazing musician known around the world. Want to talk to you a little bit about that. But Al, I want to ask you, we're going to get right into the Beatles, but you recently worked with another amazing titan of the 60s, none other than the captain of the Starship Enterprise, Mr. William Shatner, on his surprising upcoming prog rock release, Ponder the Mystery. Can you talk a little bit about what you contributed to this project?
Well, I contributed pretty much a solo over one track that they just gave me carte blanche to do what I felt on it. And it was a fairly easy thing for me to do since I didn't have to follow any directions or anything. They sent me the track. And what was really amazing was I first got to talk to him about a different subject, which was we both suffer from tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears.
Right.
And he had a catastrophic version of it, and so do I. We both have like extreme levels of the screaming. Then his happened through an explosion that happened on a Star Trek set, and he was absolutely suicidal, basically.
Wow.
And he sought help from this doctor that I was interested in finding out about. So there was a connection made through the ATA, which is the American Tinnitus Society Association, rather, and they hooked it up. He actually In fact, while I was driving one day, he called me, and we were on the phone for 45 minutes. Nicest guy in the world. And then ended the conversation with, after giving me all this real important information and success story that he had. But he then asked if I'd be interested, as a favor to him, to play on his record. And I said, are you kidding? Of course, I would love to. My God. So they sent the track. I did my part. I didn't think much about it. But then I got a call, like, very soon after, and he was just completely blown away what I did. And it was so complimentary. It was like, oh, my God, I just can't believe that he's saying these things. And he was going on and on and on and on. And I said, at that point, I said, I better turn on the speaker and run into my daughter's room so she could hear Captain Kirk say all these wonderful things about me, you know?
Well, it's funny, Al, because, William Shatner, has always had his hands and his feet in the music industry, starting out almost as I'd say a novelty act, but I really don't know how serious he was with his takes on Mr. Tambourine Man that Howard Stern helped popularize back in the day. But he's become a bit of a more respected musician these past couple of albums.
You know what? I got to educate myself to what he's been doing. I'm not really aware of it, but on this track, he's sort of a narrative role that he's taking, with some other people singing in the background, the chorus parts. So I got to really bring myself up to speed on the other aspects of what he's doing. However, he was like, man, we got to hang out. Yeah, when you come to L.A., I'll take you out to dinner and we should hang out. Man, it was really great what you did. Like, I was so blown away. You were such a great musician. And I was going, man, life is really funny. Life is really funny. I've seen him since I'm a little boy, and now he's talking this way about me. It's a mind blower. It's I also have a great McCartney story that's a mind blower.
Well, excellent. Why don't we get right into that? Because you can say that for us, and for just a couple of minutes, I am having my mind blown because I have one of the world's most incredibly talented guitar players on the phone with us right now, Mr. Al Di Meola. AlDiMeola.com is the website. The new album is All Your Life. It's a tribute to the fantastic music of the Beatles. So, Al, in this conversation, why don't you feel free to tell the McCartney story, but you went all the way back to Abbey Road, to where the Beatles made their magic happen, to put your spin on many of the Beatles' greats. And did you put a call into George Martin to help you out by any chance?
No, I did not. That would have been nice. But George Martin's forte is really in production. He did such a brilliant job with the Beatles, and really, in the days when records were flying off the shelves, and we had a much healthier record business a couple of decades back or more. The Beatles could afford themselves to not tour anymore, which they, as you know, they stopped right around '66, I believe, '67, and they spent the next three years in the studio, going to work every day, no touring at all on any of those records, like Sgt. Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour, White Album, Abbey Road. So, the production in those records resulted in quite large record company bills. So definitely, due to the circumstances of the change of the recording business and record labels going out of business, we don't have an endless amount of money to do big productions, which if I did, George Martin would be a very interesting choice. But then again, I wasn't really looking to duplicate what the Beatles did or have any kind of even close comparison. I wanted to do, first of all, with all due respect, because those songs are all sacred gems, to me. But I wanted to do something like bring My Little World to their big world. And My Little World has I have a certain style that I play, and I wanted to, with all due respect, bring those two worlds together as best as I can in an acoustic way, mostly solo, without adding a lot of other players which by the way, I was really tempted to do. I was tempted to put overdubs on and bring in other musicians, but it would have opened up a lot of difficulties, and the biggest one being, especially pointed out by my guitar player friends who heard the early tracks that I had done. They said, "No, man, it's beautiful the way it is. Don't cloud it up with other stuff. You don't need to add anything. It's really great the way it is." And I started to think about it, that it's true. The more that I add to these arrangements, which are already kind of sophisticated in their own way, the more I'm kind of like, clouding up the whole picture, plus the expense factor. So I left it pretty much as a personal contribution, personal tribute.
Well, it's very cool, Al. I mean, certainly what you've done for the Beatles catalog, not many others would be able to even approach. There's a depth and a complexity to the music. Much of it is recognizable, and some of it you have to kind of wait for the melody to come in and be, oh, okay, that's that song. I mean, upon first listen, of course.
Right, because I added, of course, I have some of my own little written intros. I have some interludes that are mine. I have some runs that separate the melodies that might be original. And then I have some improvisation parts. But, yeah, on the pieces like I Will, Eleanor Rigby, quite a lot of the pieces, I came up with intros to the pieces because a lot of them just start. I mean, the originals just kind of, some of those, they just start right on the melody. Bingo, there it is. And that would be kind of weird without a little build-up. So I wanted to also bring in an element of myself into the project.
Well, we love it. Anybody who loves acoustic guitar, who might not even be familiar with the work of Al Di Meola, but loves the Beatles, has friends, family who love the Beatles, this would be a great thing to pick up, especially as the 2013 holiday season approaches. Al, you got 14 songs on the album. Now, as you mentioned a little bit about the Beatles, how they had an amazingly fantastic career, what they packed into a decade. A lot of it was brought out because of the decision to stop touring, but the way they just changed over the course of 10 years, with each album getting more and more complex, your 14 songs kind of touches on that and tracks the changes that they had along the way. However, there's many, many other songs that the Beatles put out. How many tracks did you record when you were at Abbey Road?
Well, basically all of them that you hear on the record.
Right.
And maybe one or two others that were incomplete. We also thought of a George piece. At least we've got to have a George piece, right? But my idea was, since my promoter that does my London shows was a friend of Olivia Harrison, George's wife, we made a real good attempt, at contacting her with a nice letter that I wrote in, a hopeful wish to get one of George's guitars to use just for the session.
Oh.
So it would have made recording While My Guitar Gently Weeps or Here Comes the Sun, it would have made it so much more special to do it on his guitar. That was my idea for it. But at the time, little did we know, she was in L.A. visiting their son. So it never did quite happen. And I was running out of time and all kinds of other stuff.
Well, of course, now, if the reaction to this album is amazing in the marketplace, would you consider possibly doing another volume?
I would. We're going to have to see how well it does in the end, but there will be for sure a group version of the record with string quartet, and which will result in perhaps a CD, but definitely a DVD, because now we're going out on the road and we're reproducing this with a bunch of players, whereas the record the All Your Life record is really a personal tribute, So live with the band and with strings is a whole new dimension. So when we do I Am the Walrus, you're hearing all of those cello parts and string parts and horn parts even live. do Strawberry Fields live with the strings, you know. We do Eleanor Rigby, as you hear it on the record. We do She's Leaving Home, which is a beautiful string arrangement on the original version of the Beatles. So we do that live. So we venture into a more complex and dense production live, which is going to be very different than the All Your Life record. So that for sure will happen, and there'll be hopefully some new songs that are not on the record. So
hey, Al, do you want to lead us into your Paul McCartney story?
yeah. So in May of 2012, I was over in Europe, as I usually am that month, usually through the summer, and I had some days off, and I found myself kind of alone in the hotel because my guys in the band live in Europe, so they fly home on days off, and a lot of times I'm just sitting by myself twiddling my thumbs or practicing. So this was one of those times in my life where I really needed a diversion. I was going through a heavy thing personally in my life, and I said, you know what? I can't stay in this hotel room alone. I've got to do something. And music saved me so many times in my life. And this was a classic example, really, of this project saving my life. So my first thought was to revisit that thing that I always put in the back of my head, which was someday I would love to do a Beatles tribute. So I thought of a studio, any studio. It could have been in Prague, where I was sitting, or it could have been Germany or some studio, whatever. But then I had not thought until that, like a split second, I just thought, man, I wonder, Abbey Road, that's probably not in existence anymore, is it? I don't think so. It's probably just a tourist site. So I called up a friend of mine that lives in London, a musician friend, and he looked into it for me and said, Al, that studio is totally, fully operational. All three rooms are the same. Studio 1 and 2, where the Beatles recorded, are exactly intact, and they're fully operational. They're mostly doing soundtracks and commercials and that, and not as many bands as yesteryear. So I said, man, is there any chance I can get in there to record three tracks? I'm ready to go. So we got a call back. They had 1 day open, which turned into 3 days. Now in those 3 days, I did 3 tracks. I did If I Fell, Because, and Blackbird. And I'm telling you, it was like a feeling I hadn't had since I was a little boy, like on the level of going to Disney World for the first time when you're in total amazement, like 5-year-old just, going to an amusement park or something of a grand scale.
It's a dream.
The whole time I was there was a total, absolute thrill. So I flew over one of my best friends to act as co-producer, and I flew over my daughter, and all three of us were like completely blown away the whole time we were there. Not because of just the nostalgia, but also the sound quality of Abbey Road blows away any studio that I've ever worked in times 10. I mean, I really had never gotten a sound on my acoustic guitar so rich and pure, especially when you play the low strings. There's no woof. The rooms are amazing. You walk into the room, clap your hands, you go, oh my God, you know it's going to be great. So my idea was to record it analog as opposed to digital, just like the Beatles did it. So we did 8-track analog, which they did many of their records that way, and we used their microphones, and the whole experience was phenomenal. So to make a long story, which is already turning into a long story.
We got a little time, Al.
Oh, yeah, a little shorter. What was funny was I then, after doing that in May, went back out on tour, only had those 3 tracks in the can, and finished the tour. And then I went home to the States, and I said, you know what, I've got to arrange the rest of the pieces, because I had then attempted to record it in my own studio and then in New York City, and the sound was not there at all. Forget about it. Abbey Road was like so much better quality-wise that it forced me to go back. But before I went back, I wanted to rent a house. I had this very strong feeling to rent a house in the Hamptons, which was a place I had never been to before. I just said it would be so cool to go sit out on a deck in the Hamptons. I had this image of the Hamptons, right? So out of the millions of houses that are out there, and there are millions of houses, what would you ever think? How could this ever be that the owner of this house, it was a normal house, it wasn't a mansion, it wasn't like a 20,000 square foot place. He goes to me, "Oh, and by the way, your next door neighbor is a famous pop star." So I'm thinking, oh my God, it's probably Billy Joel or something
yeah, right.
like that. I know he lives out there. And when he said Paul McCartney, I was sitting in a restaurant and I got chills and tears because it was my dream of my life to meet this guy. I mean, I just always, from a young boy, wanted to meet Paul McCartney. Well, I actually saw John Lennon record when I was 19, when I joined Chicory and Return to Forever. John was in one room, we were in the other room, so I got to see him actually record when the door opened. But meeting Paul was my bucket list wish. Before I die, I want to meet this guy. That would be my dream. So, still trying to make this long story shorter, we put in the GPS, the address. I swear to God, I pulled up the driveway, and there was Paul McCartney, right in his driveway, right next to my driveway, with some friends and his wife. I didn't meet him the first day, but the third day, he was pulling out of the driveway, and I kind of waved at him, and he rolled the window down. He was by himself in an old Ford Bronco, dark green. That's what he drives. And he was very friendly. And I told him what I was doing. I told him who I was. "Oh, man, oh, wow." I said, "Yeah, I'm recording your music right now." I only have 3 tracks at the moment at Abbey Road. He goes, "Oh, man, wow, that's great." And we didn't talk that long, but it was a moment in time that I wrote down in my book, and I just said, I will never forget this moment. So now we fast forward, and we go to November. I did some more tracks. In February of 2013, this year, I finished it. And then the whole year, this year, I had it on my mind to go back there and hopefully give him a finished copy, and I did.
Oh, good.
So I saw him 3 more times. We talked, and I gave him the finished copy. I don't know if he's heard it yet, but it's just a very surreal experience, the whole thing.
Well, Paul's very hip, so I'm sure he knew who you were.
Well, I hope that he knows who I was, and I didn't want to come off like a lot of people do, and people might approach me sometimes, and I know what it feels like, and they sit there and they talk about themselves. You know, and I wasn't really into talking too much about myself because I was a little bit, I was awestruck as well. So, I after leaving him, after I turned around and walked away, I said, "Oh shoot! I should have said this. I should have said that. I should have mentioned those people that we both have worked with." And there was a lot of things I could have and should have said, but he'll get it. He'll get it for sure, because there's enough of people that know him now that have the record and are going to run it by him and say, that guy that was next door, that's Al Meola. That's the guy that played with Chicory, and and he'll put it together.
Right,
Sure
and Al, it gives you another excuse to go back to the Hamptons in the each coming summer.
For sure, I really want to do it again. It's one of those greatest memories that I hold. Just like recording at Abbey Road, it holds like a very special place in my mind.
There's another guitar player who I've spoken with, who I'm a big fan of, who is also a huge fan of the Beatles, and you probably are aware who he is because you tread the similar magazine covers and articles. Mr. Phil Keaggy has a similar story of meeting Paul McCartney. Are you aware of Phil's work?
A little bit, yeah.
All right.
Very good. What I heard, very good.
Oh yeah, he's very interesting too, Al. So Al Di Meola is on the phone. AlDiMeola.com. The new album is All Your Life. It's a Beatles tribute. Al, I have a stack here, and we're obviously not going to be able to get to everything that I want to talk to you. And I know you've had a busy gamut today with the media, but I would like to just ask you a couple more questions.
All right.
So you're definitely aimed high with this release, covering one of the most incredible bands, pop and rock bands of all time. Are there any other acts of a similar caliber that you would be willing to do the tribute treatment with?
Not really. I thought about it. You know, there's songs from a lot of acts that I like, but there's no one act where the vast majority of their repertoire is as loved as the Beatles. So I don't think it's something that I would probably do another Beatles record before I consider doing something from someone else. But really, I'm anxious to get back to writing because that's what I do. I'm a composer, so I have a certain faction of fans that are like, "Come on, man, get back to writing your stuff. Your stuff is more interesting." Well, look, this was a project of passion doing the Beatles stuff. This music I consider sacred. My stuff is Adventure City. It just goes from one place to the next. It's all over the place, and this involves technical challenges and all that stuff. The Beatles were not about that, and shouldn't be about that. You know, I didn't want to turn it into that either. So it was just finding a fine line to meld my style of syncopation and rhythm, primarily in phrasing, and pay due respect to the greatest group that ever walked the planet. You know.
Plus, as you're paying homage to them, you never know how that work is going to inform your future work.
Yeah, you know, it may turn on a whole other crowd that loves the Beatles didn't even know of me. Who knows? I don't know. All I know is just, you know, as an artist, we go with usually our instincts, and few of us go with the ideas of other people. So I went with my heart totally on this one. I even paid for the project myself. It was something that I really wanted to do. I did it without a record company's involvement, and I mean now I have a deal after the fact. But this is something that turned into a project of passion that I'm very proud of. I got to say, it's a strange kind of proud because you think, you know, if it's your own music, you would be even more proud. But I'm just as proud, if not more, of this one.
Al, we love it here at soundpress.net. We've been listening to it a lot. We got a review online. We're my wife is a huge Beatles fan, and she just loves it. I told her that's the album that we'll play at your wake if you beat me to it.
Okay.
So.
All right, bud.
I told you in getting ready for this, this would be a little bit of this is your life. But I came across an interesting fact that you share your birthday with an amazing list of eclectic celebrities. Were you aware of that?
Well, I know of Don Henley.
Right, Don Henley's one.
I know of the actor. What's his name?
Well, there's a lot of actors. You got William Dafoe. That one. Danny Glover and Albert Brooks are three actors that you share. There's several athletes, Sparky Lyle of the New York Yankees being one. I believe your birthday this year, Al, was overshadowed by the royal baby.
Oh, yeah. Famous day.
Yeah,
famous day.
Born on. But the band you could put together of people who are that share your birthday would be George Clinton of Parliament Funkadelic. Don Henley,
right.
Don Henley, you mentioned,
right,
and a bunch of others. So something's good's happening on that day is my only point. So
something good, yeah. It's amazing. I went into this bookstore called Rizzoli. Remember Rizzoli?
I don't actually.
Rizzoli is like a real artsy bookstore in New York City, and I think its origins are Italy, but they had one down in Soho and one up on 57th Street. Amazing bookstores. I think, unfortunately, Barnes and Nobles and those type of stores they just ate them up. But these are really classy, artsy bookstores. And I walked in one day because I wasn't big on horoscope and all of that, and lo and behold, there was this real thick horoscope book, and like everything you want to know about horoscopes. So they had, the days and people born on that day, and they had me listed on the 22nd. So, along with some of those people you mentioned. So I was kind of impressed with that they considered me on my day. But what was amazing was what they said about people that were born on that day. It was like me to a T. And I said, nah, this can't be. And then I turned to my daughter's birthday, who she's now 24, and they had her pretty much nailed too. And I said, man, this is. And then I went to, I think, one other person, and it was like amazing how right on they were about, you know, a couple of people I know and myself. And I wound up buying the book.
Oh, interesting. Al, also the city of Cleveland was formed on July 22nd, so that's very important.
Oh, my God.
Very important
I don't know if that's a good thing, but that's...
Well, it's important to rock and roll, that's for sure. Hey, Al, listen.
Yeah, that's true.
I got 3 more I'd like to ask you. I've had so many repeat guests on this program over the years. So, I mean, I'm from New Jersey. We love your music. We saw you this summer with Gonzalo Rubacabla in Tarrytown. We really enjoyed that show. Got to see some of your Beatles music at that point. So what I'm saying is I'd love to have you back on. You know, feel free. We're going to get this show on satellite radio very, very soon. So we're going to expand the base. But you've traveled the world extensively, Al, playing for a wide variety of audiences over the past 40 years. Where's your favorite place on earth to perform?
Well, I think it's been Germany. German audiences are pretty amazing. It's really hard to explain because when I played there with Chick in the early days and then my early bands, I didn't have the same feeling about it. And I just think that they have come to really like the changes that I've made as a musician, or the additions of these certain musical influences into an acoustic setting that they really gravitate to in a big way, as opposed to the electric stuff, which used to probably tear their heads off, because a lot of these beautiful theaters over there were designed for classical acoustic music. So, you know, you put drums in there and an amplifier and all that kind of bass, and it's not as enjoyable to the ear. I mean, you're getting slaughtered. So when I made the shift to acoustic, I'm not saying totally acoustic, but whenever I've done the acoustic thing, and just also the musical ingredients of the music really appeals to a more European crowd, it turned out to be. So Germany really turned out to be phenomenal because there's endless amount of cities you can play. Everything's very organized. Everything's very clean. You always get paid. It's like a lot of positives.
Good. Well, you raised one other point that I had as another question, but you emerged as a proficient jazz fusion guitar player, playing loud electric, playing fast. And over the years, you've transformed a bit into an acoustic player, playing Latin-tinged, tango-based music. So I just wanted to ask you, do you feel that your personal fan base is divided between groups who might like one style over the other?
In Europe, no. It's pretty much it's one big audience, that loves what I'm doing and embraced the changes that came along. The United States, you got a point. There still is there's still a few stragglers that would love me to strap on the Les Paul and blow the rest of my hearing out. There's still a few out there and even myself, I would love to do it again, and I might, but I have to just figure out how to do it where I don't further damage what's left.
And that's the main, and we don't even have to ask that question because we touched on it twice now today, but the heavy stuff, there's a real reason. It's not that you've just turned your back on it, but it's a physical and it's a health thing that you really got to be cognizant of if you want to be able.
All musicians, all have a hearing loss. All have various degrees of hearing loss, and believe it or not, it's pretty easy to deal with it. It's not that bad. But if you have tinnitus, there's nothing at all you can do for it. And usually it's associated, on top of which you got hearing loss. So the hearing loss you can kind of correct with certain devices, if it gets that bad. But there's nothing you could do about if you're one out of the 20 people That's the way I look at it. There might be 1 out of 20 people that are losing their hearing through listening to loud music for more than 40 years, or even 20. Look at the kids today with the loud rap music and stuff like that. They definitely will be mostly having to wear hearing aids at some point because of the bass being so overwhelming. But tinnitus, there's nothing that you can do for it, and you just have to live with screaming.
Wow.
Loud screaming.
It's more than just a ringing in the ears, as people kind of tend to.
Well, it's just that you can't turn it off, so you're constantly living with, that.
Hey Al, so you have a Facebook page. You're nearing 100,000 fans. I was on there getting ready for this interview today. You recently posted a link from an interview that you did with Guitar World magazine, and on there and on that post, a lot of the comments from the fans weren't really in your favor, and I just was wondering, and some were, but of course everybody had an opinion. But how do you feel about here we are in this day and age where you could make music in the 70s and 80s and not really hear from the fans or see them display their opinions in such a wide fashion? Do you have any opinions on how Facebook is allowing your fans to kind of have that type of interaction with you, but also your audience as a whole?
Certain aspects of it I like. I was really making a conscious effort to avoid it as much as possible for so long, until recently. I'm starting to post like some pictures of like me and Paco in the studio for the day we recorded Mediterranean Sundance. I mean, this is stuff fans would love to see that they've never seen. Or me and Les Paul in the studio, in his studio up in Meola in 1980. People love this kind of stuff, and I've been getting mostly very, very encouraging comments back, which really, it really good. It's a boost to know that there's people around the world that love what I'm doing, or love the actual picture that's being shown, or records that we're talking about, like this Beatles tribute and all. Occasionally you get somebody that doesn't care for the Beatles, but that's like 1 out of probably 300.
Right. Some unenlightened moron.
Huh?
Some unenlightened moron who doesn't like the Beatles.
Total moron. I mean, come on. Jesus, how do you not like the Beatles? Something wrong with you.
Al, here's the final question, Al. I have to ask it because while searching for to prepare for this interview, I found a website for guitar instruction, and somebody had posted a thread titled two guitar instructor types. I need to know how to get Al Di Meola chops. So instead of looking for a guitar instructor to answer that question, I figured I'd ask you directly. How do you get the chops? I mean, I have an idea, but it takes a long time, I imagine.
Well, the obvious answer, most people say practice, and all that stuff, but it's really a combination of elements. And the one element I could talk about, because it is of course a lot of practice, and I just hate it sounding cliche. It is a lot of that element. It's mostly that, of course, but here's something a classical player told me that you never hear about in rock or jazz. And he said that a certain percentage of your ability to have a good amount of technical proficiency has to do with the structure, the bone structure of your hand and your arm. Now, I was like nearly floored when I heard that, because I had never heard anything like that. And he says, yeah, that's widely known in the classical field, that the musicians that are known for their technical proficiency, they have a certain advantage due to the structure of their bone structure.
They're born with it.
So that's something we never hear ever in any jazz forum or any interview or anybody like that talking about it. You just basically hear practice. But there's another little element in there, perhaps, as pointed out by a very, very well-known classical composer, conductor, and guitarist named what's his name? I forgot his name now. I was going to say Lenny BROUGH, but it's the guy from Cuba. I just drew a blank.
So is there a surgery that people can get now if they're not?
No.
You might want to patent that, Al.
No.
Hey, man.
But, it was just so interesting to hear it that I.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna get back to work. I mean, I've never played 10 hours a day like you did, and I'm almost 50 now, so my 10,000 hours are not in. But Al, thank you so much for talking today.
It was great talking to you. I'm off to my next interview. I'm late for, but I got to run. But it was really great talking to you, man.
Likewise, Al. Great luck with the album.
Thanks for supporting the record.
Yep. Thanks. Bye, Al.
Take care, bud.
Thanks for listening to the Rockin' Rich Lynch on the Radio Show, part of the SoundPress.net radio network. Remember, if you're a band or artist looking for promotion, or if you'd like to sponsor this show or add this program to your station, please get in touch with us today at SoundPress.net.